WWE NXT TakeOver The End happens live tonight, and before I get into it, I just want to say that Samoa Joe and Finn Balor are competing inside a steel cage, so hopefully the referee brings all the towels he needs into the ring to stop the blood, because it'll be a little awkward with the medical staff running into a steel cage to help out. So NXT The End is finally here, the name that has since caused a lot of ruckus, a lot of stir, which is done a great job by WWE, whoever is the one that kind of came up with the end to get people talking, especially with the brand split. The obvious meaning here of NXT The End would be the longest reigning title feud between Samoa Joe and Finn Balor, and just kind of ending it and culminating to something new. Now, whether or not that's maybe Finn going up to the main roster, maybe Samoa Joe moves up to the main roster, who knows? I think a lot of different outcomes could possibly come from this pay-per-view. Now let's look. So far we have 5 matches, I'm sure. Actually, with NXT, you don't always have to, you're not so sure about a match getting added. I would like to see maybe one more match be added, or at least the proper time be devoted to each match. On the card, you have Andrade. I'm just going to call him Manny for now, because that's what he has been wrestling as. It's La Sombra from the Indies, if you remember or you know of him. I think it'll be a very, very exciting debut going up against the Perfect 10 Tye Dillinger. Now, there's a couple different reasons this is interesting. One would assume that Omos would pick up a victory here. He's debuting. He's going on to bigger and better things. Some have speculated that the Cruiserweight Classic was specifically just to get him over. And if that's the case, a loss in his first WWE match to help elevate Tye Dillinger wouldn't actually be the worst thing in the world. If you look at the string of debuts, everybody's won. Austin Aries came in, he got bullied by Baron Corbin, and then ultimately ended up getting the victory, though, at the last NXT event. You have Shinsuke Nakamura, who debuted against Sami Zayn, what is one of the best matches in the company in the last at least 5 years, if not the best match of this year by itself, if not for that fatal 4-way match. And you've looked at everybody else that's came in, Kevin Owens, and things don't always end the way they're supposed to. So if Tye Dillinger is going to stay in the role of making people look good, he's kind of becoming the Tyler Breeze, with Tyler Breeze now gone from the roster. He's basically just helping put over other superstars, which kind of sucks, because I think I do see a little something in Tye Dillinger. I don't ever know if it'll get him out of the spot that he's in. But a good showing here and somewhat of a surprising upset victory would help him move his way up the card in a way, and then allow La Sombra to focus on the Cruiserweight Classic, which I think wouldn't, in fact, be the worst way to go, especially with if somebody's debuting, they don't always have to win if booked or the match is, produced correctly. Other matches on the card, you have the tag team title rematch between American Alpha and the Revival. Now, I said this a long time ago, I think it was a year or two ago, with Scott Dawson. I was very high up on Scott Dawson. And then he was injured and went away for a good chunk of time. When he came back, I was a little nervous if he was going to be able to still bring it. And I have to say, I'm a huge fan of the Revival. No flips, just fists. Bringing it back, some of the spots there, I'm seeing gifts compared to like the 70s and the 80s wrestling. And I have to be honest, what they are doing is phenomenal, but what American Alpha is doing is just a bit more phenomenal. I think that Chad Gable and Jason Jordan are just becoming the best tag team in the company. There's something about, I don't know if that something is the crowd. I don't know if it's them just being that electric. Usually when you see an NXT talent, you look at the main roster and you wonder if it can work. A lot of the times with NXT, some of the gimmicks, if you look at them, are more of, playing off the smaller crowds. And then some of the bigger stuff doesn't necessarily carry over. Like Adam Rose didn't really carry over very well. Apollo still really isn't carrying over as much as it did in NXT. Enzo and Big Cass have that pop. So it's just kind of a mix of who is going to get that opportunity and whose, gimmick that down NXT is going to carry over the most. And American Alpha, they're just two awesome wrestlers that put on a show and, have that Olympic or have that wrestling background that is there to solidify them to be legit enough. So I'm all for American Alpha. Now, whether or not they retain, you do have an interesting thing with the brand split coming up. Will one of these teams be split up in a way? Will they be split up from the titles, or will they be split up as a tag team and go their separate ways? I think Gable and Jordan have a long way to go as a tag team yet. I think it's working. I don't want to see American Alpha broke up at all. Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder as well are doing great as a tag team. I don't necessarily want to see them broken up. But with the brand split, would either one of these tag teams get called up? And if I'm looking at it that way, I would much rather right now, and there's going to be some people that are upset, but let me explain my rationale why. I would prefer if the Revival got called up first. I think their style to, compensate with some of the high-flying teams would be a good way to diversify the group. Now, I want the American Alpha on the main roster. I eventually want them to be tag team champions, take over the world, all that goodness. But for right now, right before the brand split, if one team was to say lose this and they were to get called up, I think they're better off waiting till the brand split. But if they went now, the Revival would be a great way to slow down like the Lucha Dragons. They could help, offset. They could almost kind of work with like the Vaudevillains in a way. They could let the Vaudevillains still work their old-timey style and then allow, the Revival to work that no flips, just fists, keep it on the ground style of action, especially with Enzo and Big Cass up there now. You have the Usos, which do a lot more high-flying stuff, and you just let them do tag team wrestling, and the Revival, I think, would be a great asset to help put over the tag teams you have on the main roster while still making them look legitimate, and I see that happening during a brand split with possibly 2 World Tag Team titles available. I think the Revival would definitely fill that gap. So out of this pay-per-view, if anybody was to get called up immediately, I would probably say the Revival out of this group, and here's why. You look at Finn, everybody wants Finn on the main roster. I think that Finn's debut should kind of come out of nowhere. I don't know if I want it just yet, because I want to see where the club goes eventually to see if he can fit into that storyline-wise. Samoa Joe, as much as I want him on the NXT roster and, called up to the main roster, because there's a lot of history between AJ Styles and pretty much anybody from TNA. Samoa Joe would have some great history, or if you look at the Ring of Honor Lego work, I think him and Seth Rollins could put on some absolutely phenomenal matches. But right now, I see the Revival being the most ready to come up and, offset what WWE currently has to make a good impact. Now, obviously, Nakamura would be my number one call-up. Nakamura, just in general, is Nakamura. The charisma, the personality, the ability, I want Nakamura up on the roster. But for what I see, especially with the growth of the tag team and trying to solidify, and you look at the Fatal 4 with Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, and then the Vaudevillains and Enzo and Big Cass and the New Day, I think the Revival would fit that spirit pretty well, especially with helping neutralize the New Day, which we'll talk about the tag team division and the tag teams in general, especially with the upcoming match at Money in the Bank. Other matches on the card include Asuka taking on Nia Jax. Now, something I speculated and predicted months and months ago, if you wanted to make some money in NXT with, people hate Eva Marie. Eva Marie, already gets booed. What better way than to have Nia Jax do all the legwork for a title match, to win the title and just have her hand it over to Eva Marie as this Eva Marie, I'm just giving it to her. She lays down for Eva Marie, and then out of no fault of her own, you already hate Eva Marie. Well, here's Eva Marie handed it again by Nia Jax. You get Nia even more heelish. You get Asuka wondering what the hell happened. Maybe she can go up to the main roster, bring some fusion up there. Especially with a brand split, I think she would do very, very well. And then ultimately, you would eventually pay for Nia Jax to beat the living shit out of Eva Marie. Eva Marie starts to get cocky, letting it get to her head. She's got this title. And eventually Nia Jax just has enough of it, of kind of being her assistant, of being her heavy, of being, her bodyguard, being whatever. And ultimately she just eviscerates her. She just lays into her. And she wants a title match. But because she gave it to her, she has to actually fight her for it. And then you have NXT TakeOver event where it's just people paying in the division to watch Eva Marie get the shit kicked out of her. That would be quite a beating, and if you honestly think about it, I would be okay with it. Other matches on the card, the last two that we still have to touch on, Nakamura taking on Austin Aries. I think it'll be great for a multitude of reasons. One, that neither one of these guys needs a victory. Nakamura is already so over, one of the best wrestlers in the company right now, probably the most charisma in the company out of anybody. And Austin Aries still trying to acclimate over to WWE. And I think this is a good matchup for A-Double, especially after he faced Baron Corbin last month. He'll be able to go a little bit faster paced, a little bit more action. And for those of you that weren't sold on Austin Aries before, this match should definitely help solidify your opinion and whether or not you do like him. And just, it's Nakamura, guys. Just sit back, enjoy, and relax. And then the last one is Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor. And honestly, there's a couple different ways you can go here. You let Finn regain his title. Samoa Joe can eventually get called up, or maybe this feud continues on. Or you just let Samoa Joe, in typical NXT fashion, let him retain his title, and then Finn moves up to the main roster. And character development-wise, the best thing that could happen tonight is Samoa Joe retains, and maybe not even clean. Maybe Samoa Joe just does something to Finn, and Finn ultimately flips, and that's where we get to see more of the demon character that just comes out of Finn. He goes to that place, similar to how you always hear Michael Cole talk about Randy Orton going to that place, the demonic place that Finn has. He can go from the happy-go-lucky guy to nothing in less than 2 seconds, and ultimately see that character on the main roster with the club, the Bullet Club in WWE. So let me know what you guys think about the NXT TakeOver event. Until next time, it's your boy Tubby Emu.